All right, so we're diving into a topic today that a lot of you have been asking about.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interest in this one.
It's the mental health crisis in construction. And wow, just going through all the research you sent, it's really been eye-opening. I think we all picture construction and we think hard hats, steel-toed boots.
Right, the physical safety stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But turns out mental health is just as critical. Who knew?
It really is, and it goes way beyond just, somebody feeling good or bad. We're talking about the foundation of a successful project, period.
Okay, so break that down for me. What do you mean, like foundation?
Think of it this way. You've got this massive skyscraper, right? Everybody thinks about the steel, the concrete, all the...
Certainly the materials.
But the strength of that whole thing, it's also in the well-being of each person on that site. Every single worker.
Whoa, okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
It's all connected.
So how does that, play out in real life? On the job, day to day?
Well, there are studies that have actually shown that construction workers who are under a lot of stress,
More than the usual stress of the job.
yeah, high stress levels, they're 3 times more likely to get into accidents.
Seriously, 3 times.
It's a huge difference because when you're stressed, anxious, it messes with your focus, your decision-making, how fast you react, all of that.
And on a construction site, split-second decisions matter.
Big time. And it's not just about the individual, right? One person's mental state being off, it puts everyone at risk.
Right, it's a domino effect.
Exactly. So it becomes a safety issue for the whole team.
Wow, that's a really good point. So we've got the individual worker, but what about the team dynamic? How does this affect the whole group?
Well, when you've got workers who feel supported, their mental health is actually valued. You see this ripple effect. Teams start working together better, they communicate more clearly, and even when there's conflict.
Which, let's be real, happens on any project.
Oh, all the time. But they handle it better, more constructively. Less, yelling and more actually solving the problem.
So, smoother workflow, fewer errors, which ultimately means...
Well, successful projects. And that's not even getting into how this all affects companies keeping their workers.
retention. You talk about retention. That's a huge issue in construction.
Huge. The industry is known for high turnover, people constantly coming and going.
Yeah, it's a revolving door sometimes.
But the companies that are making mental health a priority, they're seeing that turnover drop way down.
I bet. People want to stay where they feel valued.
Exactly. And when workers feel valued, supported, they're more likely to stick around for the long haul.
Which saves the company a ton of money and hassle in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. Think about all the time and money it takes to recruit, hire, train new people.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've established good mental health, it's crucial. For safety, for success, the whole package.
Definitely.
But let's face it, construction, it's a tough gig.
No doubt about it.
So what are some of those things that make construction work so demanding, so tough on people's mental well-being?
I mean, the physical stuff is obvious, right? Long hours, it's physically tiring, you're out in the elements.
Yeah, heat, cold, rain.
All of it. But it's really the stuff you don't always see that wears you down mentally.
Give me an example.
Like the unpredictability. One day's smooth, the next day everything goes sideways.
Right. Delays, unexpected problems.
Exactly. Plus you've got deadlines, potential hazards everywhere you look, and this pressure to perform to get things done fast.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. And then you add in things like schedules are all over the place, lots of travel for work.
Yeah, time away from family, friends.
Right. All of that adds up. It's a recipe for burnout.
Plus, let's not forget the financial pressure. A lot of construction jobs, the pay isn't steady, it's up and down.
Right. And finding good health insurance, so that's a whole other stress.
Definitely. That financial uncertainty, not knowing if you can cover the bills, if you'll have enough if something happens.
It weighs on you, adds a whole other layer to an already tough job.
For sure. And we've talked before about the isolation, right? Moving from job site to job site.
Yeah, you don't always have that same team, those connections.
You're not putting down roots.
It can get lonely. So when you combine all of this, it's no wonder that prioritizing mental health in this industry is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's easy to talk about, right? What are companies actually doing? We found some really interesting examples of companies taking action, being proactive.
Oh, yeah. Some really cool stuff out there. There's this company, Tech Innovations, Inc. They went all in on their employee well-being.
Okay, how so?
They started with an employee assistance program, so, confidential counseling.
Making sure people have that outlet.
They didn't stop there. They actually changed up their work schedules, made them more flexible.
To help with burnout.
Exactly. And get this, They even built a wellness center right there on site.
No way, a whole wellness center. That's impressive.
It was. And it wasn't just, treadmills and weights. They had meditation rooms, space for yoga.
Oh, wow. So they were really thinking holistically.
Yeah, they even had classes on stress management, mindfulness techniques. It was the whole package. And you know what? Their employee turnover, it just plummeted.
That speaks volumes.
It really does. Shows that people felt like the company actually cared about them.
That's great to hear.
Huh.
What about other companies? Any other standouts?
Oh, yeah. There's Building Solutions Ltd. They took a different approach. They were all about creating this culture where mental health is just something you talk about. It's normal.
Yeah, breaking down that stigma.
Exactly. They made mental health training mandatory for every single employee.
Wow, so from the CEO down to, like, the newest hire.
Everyone. And they made it a point to have regular check-ins, supervisors with their teams.
So not just about work stuff, but like checking in on how people are doing.
Exactly. A chance to connect, see if anything's going on that might be affecting someone's work.
That's really important. And they did something else, right? Something about peer support.
Yeah, they set up this whole peer support network. Basically, they trained volunteers within the company to be there for their colleagues.
Like people who understood the work, the pressures.
Exactly. So these volunteers, they created this safe space where people could talk about their struggles, get support without feeling judged.
Makes a huge difference, having someone who gets it.
It does. Creates a sense of belonging, which is so important in an industry where people can feel isolated.
For sure. So it's not always these huge, expensive programs. Sometimes it's the smaller things, the human connection that makes the biggest difference.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that sense of community.
Right. And then there was that other company, Creative Horizons Agency. They got pretty creative, right?
Oh, they did. They realized that a lot of construction workers, they're on the move all the time, might not have access to regular programs.
Yeah, makes sense.
So they did all these virtual wellness workshops. People could join from their phones, tablets, wherever they were.
That's smart. And they did something with, like, challenges, right, to make it fun.
Oh, yeah. They had these team-based challenges like step counting, mindfulness stuff. Made it more engaging.
Love that. Turns wellness into something fun. Competitive, even.
Exactly. And they had this great idea. They appointed mental health champions within the company.
I remember reading about that. So these were people who were, like, the go-to for mental health support.
Yeah, they got special training, could provide information, resources, just be a listening ear.
So they were helping to break down that stigma around mental health.
Huge part of it. It's inspiring to see all these different approaches, Shows that there's not just one right way to do this.
It's about finding what works for each company, each team.
Exactly. The key is to be proactive, to actually listen to what your workers need and then create a culture that supports them.
Yeah, that makes sense. These examples, they give me hope that things are moving in the right direction. But I am curious to hear more about the impact of these initiatives.
Yeah,
Have companies seen, like, actual improvements in things like productivity, safety? And what about the challenges? What roadblocks do they hit when they're trying to make these changes? I'm going to dig into all of that after a quick break. So it sounds like it takes more than just, putting a program in place or having a workshop.
Oh, yeah, it's way deeper than that.
It's about changing the whole company culture, right?
It is. It's a whole mindset shift. Construction's always had this, tough it out, suck it up mentality.
Yeah, you got to be tough to work in construction. That's the image.
Right. But we need to move away from that, create a culture where it's okay to not be okay, where asking for help
is actually seen as a strength.
Exactly. Not a weakness.
Which makes sense. But how do you actually do that? Like, how do you change a whole company's mindset?
Well, first off, you got to acknowledge the elephant in the room, right? The specific challenges construction workers face.
Yeah, it's not like an office job.
Not even close. The long hours, the physical strain, that constant pressure to get things done, to perform, it takes a toll.
Yeah.
And you can't just ignore that.
Right, you can't slap a Band-Aid on it with, like, a meditation app and call it a day.
Exactly. It's about building a whole support system, clear policies, confidential counseling available, and training supervisors so they can actually spot the signs if someone's struggling.
So they can be proactive, step in.
Exactly. And know how to do it the right way, have those tough conversations.
It sounds like communication is key here.
Oh, it's everything. Workers need to feel like they can actually talk about what's going on without being judged or punished for it.
And that starts at the top, right? With leadership.
Absolutely. When managers, executives, they're open about their own experiences, their own struggles.
It makes it okay for everyone else.
Exactly. It sets the tone, shows vulnerability is allowed.
You mentioned training for supervisors. What does that usually look like?
Well, it covers a lot. How to spot the signs of, anxiety, depression, burnout.
Right, those common mental health issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But also how to talk to someone who's struggling, how to offer support without overstepping.
Yeah, and knowing where to direct them if they need more help.
Right, connecting them with the right resources. It's about giving supervisors the tools and the confidence to handle these situations.
So it's not all on the supervisor's shoulders, right? The workers themselves, they have a role to play too.
Oh, huge role. It's about looking out for each other. Peer support is so powerful.
Yeah, just knowing you've got people who understand.
Exactly, who've been there, done that. And workers can also be their own advocates.
What do you mean?
If they're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, they need to speak up, ask for help. Don't wait till it's too late.
Which brings up a good point, confidentiality. Construction, it can be a tight-knit community,
Oh yeah, everyone knows everyone.
which is great for bonding, but I imagine for some people, they might worry about everyone knowing their business if they seek help.
That's a valid concern. Confidentiality is crucial. Companies need to have clear policies protecting workers' privacy, their information.
So it's not gossip fodder for the water cooler.
Definitely not. And they should offer those confidential counseling services, whether it's through an EAP or an outside provider.
So workers feel safe, like they can get help without it impacting their jobs.
Exactly.
Earlier, we were talking about some of those companies seeing great results. Could you give some concrete examples?
Oh, yeah. Companies that put in the effort, they're seeing real benefits, less absenteeism, so people aren't calling out sick as much,
Makes sense.
and less presenteeism, which is when people show up, but they're not really there, you know?
They're going through the motions.
Exactly. Not engaged, not productive. But when companies invest in mental health, you see that change.
People are actually present, doing their best work.
Right. And productivity goes up, projects get finished on time, and workers, they feel valued. So they take pride in their work, go the extra mile.
Sounds like everyone wins.
It really is. Happier, healthier workers, more successful projects, everybody benefits.
Are there like tools out there to help companies actually measure this stuff, show the impact of investing in mental health?
There are. One that's gaining popularity is the mental health program ROI calculator.
Okay, what is that?
Basically, it helps companies put a dollar amount on the benefits of their mental health programs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it takes into account things like reduced absenteeism, increased productivity, lower healthcare costs. All of that adds up.
So it's not just touchy-feely, it's good business sense.
Exactly. It shows that investing in mental health, it's not just the right thing to do ethically, it's smart financially too.
I like that. Takes away the guesswork, shows the real impact.
Yep. Changes the whole conversation.
Yeah.
Mental health isn't an expense, it's an investment.
Makes sense. But even with all these positive changes, I'm sure there are still roadblocks. What are some of the biggest challenges companies face?
Well, the stigma, it's still a big one, especially in construction, where there's this whole image of being tough, self-reliant.
Yeah, not showing weakness.
Right. A lot of workers, they're still hesitant to admit they're struggling, to ask for help. They worry about what others will think.
So it's about changing that whole perception.
It is. It's about companies being open, talking about mental health, sharing resources, making it clear that it's okay to not be okay.
And backing that up with actions, right? Walking the walk.
Exactly. Having policies, programs that actually support mental well-being.
So it's about creating a safe space where being vulnerable is actually valued.
Exactly. But I'll be honest, for smaller companies, it can be tough.
Yeah, they don't always have the same resources as those big corporations.
Right. Budget constraints are real. They might not have the staff to create, like, a whole mental health department.
So what can they do?
Well, there are smaller steps they can take that still make a difference, like providing mental health awareness training to all their employees.
Okay, so educating everyone.
Yeah, raising awareness and encouraging peer support networks so people have each other's backs.
That human connection again.
Exactly. And even just creating a culture of open communication where it's safe to talk about your struggles.
Makes a difference. So it's not all about money, it's about creating that supportive environment.
You got it. But even with the best intentions, sometimes it's hard to reach everyone.
Especially in construction, where you've got people all over the place, different sites, different schedules.
Exactly. Accessibility is a huge challenge. Construction workers, they're not always sitting at a desk checking emails.
Right, they're out in the field working.
So how do you get resources to them?
Yeah.
That's where technology comes in. We're seeing more and more companies using things like virtual counseling.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, people can access it from anywhere, on their phones, tablets, no matter where they are, what their schedule is like.
That's great. And there are apps too, right?
Tons of them. For mental health resources, self-assessment tools, even connecting with peers for support, technology is really helping to bridge that gap.
Makes it easier for people to get the help they need when they need it.
Exactly. But technology isn't a magic bullet. There will always be people who are hesitant to reach out.
Yeah, even if it's easy, confidential.
Right. That stigma, that fear, it runs deep. So it's still about creating that workplace culture where mental health is normalized.
Here, seeking help is encouraged and confidentiality is
Like,
given.
exactly. It's a multi-pronged approach. You need the resources, but you also need the right environment.
Makes sense. So we've talked about the challenges, the solutions. What about the future? What do you see on the horizon for mental health in construction? Anything you're particularly excited about? We'll get into that and wrap up with some final takeaways after a quick break. After this deep dive, I'm actually feeling pretty optimistic about where things are headed with mental health in construction.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of positive momentum.
Companies are starting to get it, that taking care of their workers mentally, it's not just the right thing to do. It's good for business, too.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
But I'm sure there are still, hurdles to overcome. What do you see as the biggest challenges moving forward?
Well, one big one is you've got these larger companies. They've got the resources to create these amazing programs. But then you've got smaller companies. They might be struggling just to keep the lights on, you know?
Yeah, they might not even know where to start.
Right. So we need to find ways to make sure that every construction worker, no matter who they work for, big company, small company,
Has access to support.
exactly. It's got to be a level playing field.
So how do we do that? What role do you see, government regulations or industry-wide initiatives playing in all of this?
Oh, they're huge. I mean, we can encourage companies all day long, but at some point, it's got to be more than just, hey, do the right thing.
Right, it needs teeth.
Exactly. We need policies that make mental health support standard, like mandatory mental health awareness training for everyone.
Okay, that makes sense. Everyone gets that baseline knowledge.
Yeah. And then when we're talking about safety protocols, it can't just be about physical safety.
Right, got to include the mental side, too.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe even, financial incentives for companies that are really prioritizing their workers' well-being.
Reward those who are doing it right.
Exactly. It's about weaving mental health into the very fabric of the construction industry.
So it just becomes part of the culture, as normal as putting on your hard hat.
That's the goal. We need to shift the whole mindset. It's not about toughing it out. It's about taking care of each other.
It's funny, we keep coming back to this comparison with safety equipment. It made me think, what if someday we have mental health toolbox talks? As common as those talks about wearing your hard hat or using the right tools.
Love that.
It might sound kind of crazy now, but it also shows how much potential there is for real change.
It does. It's about making mental health just as ingrained in the work culture as physical safety, because they're both so important.
Totally. You can't have one without the other. This has been a really insightful deep dive. We've learned about the challenges, the solutions, the whole picture. But for our listener, what's the one thing you want them to walk away with?
I think the most important thing is to remember this. Mental health, it's not a weakness. And asking for help, that's actually a sign of strength.
Well said.
We all go through tough times. There's absolutely no shame in reaching out for support. And that goes for anyone, construction worker, manager, whoever you are. You're not alone, and there is help out there.
That's so important to remember. And for our listener, if you're feeling overwhelmed, please reach out. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, family, a colleague, a mental health professional. There are people who care and they want to help.
And if you're in a leadership position, remember, you have a big influence on the culture around you. Be that advocate for mental health. Create that space where people feel safe to talk about what they're going through, and make sure they have access to the resources they need.
It all comes down to creating that supportive environment. It's been an incredible conversation. This deep dive has given me a lot of hope for the future of mental health in construction. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us. Remember, your mental health matters and you deserve to feel supported. We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable information and maybe even a little bit of hope for the future.